Former Bosnian Serb commander Ratko Mladic will hear today a decision on his appeal against his genocide conviction for crimes committed during the 1990s conflict in the former Yugoslavia. Mladic was jailed for life in 2017 after a UN tribunal in The Hague. Among other atrocities, he was sentenced for his role in the Srebrenica massacre. It's the only crime in Europe since World War II to be declared a genocide. Victims' relatives have travelled to The Hague to hear the verdict.
A few kilometres north of Srebrenica, the Genocide Memorial and Cemetery honour the victims of the 1995 massacre. Shura Sinanovic lost 23 members of her family, including her husband. His last words to her, "Take care of our children." When Yugoslavia broke up in the early 1990s, ethnic coexistence rapidly dissolved into ethnic conflict. Bosnia and Herzegovina became one of the most bitterly contested territories, as Serbs, Croats and Bosniaks vied for control. In July 1995, Bosnian Serb General Ratko Mladic entered Srebrenica. In the following days, at least 8,000 Bosniak Muslims were slaughtered, mostly men and boys. The remains are still being identified by forensic scientists today using DNA analysis. Mladic went on trial at the UN Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and in 2017 he was found guilty of war crimes and genocide.
For having committed these crimes, the Chamber sentences Mr. Ratko Mladic to life imprisonment.
Mladic has challenged his genocide conviction, and the appeal verdict will be the last in the case against him. 60 kilometres from Sarajevo, in his hometown of Kalinovic, Mladic is still revered as a hero, a view held by many Bosnian Serbs. He's an honest man, an honest commander who only defended his people, nothing else. I think he deserves to be released because he's not guilty of anything. Those who lost loved ones in the genocide hope the final ruling will confirm Mladic's guilt. For them, it's a question of justice. Not just for their families, but for all humankind.
Let's bring in Katarina Ristic here. She's a researcher with the Global and European Studies Institute at Leipzig University. Thanks for being with us this morning. Dr. Ristic, what are you expecting from the court today? Do you think Mr. Mladic has a chance of winning his appeal?
Thank you. One cannot really predict the legal verdict, but I do not expect that tribunal would significantly alter the trial chamber decision from 2017. As a matter of fact, it is widely expected that the appeal chamber will confirm that Mladic was guilty on the charges of genocide in Srebrenica, of terrorizing civilians in Sarajevo during the 3 years long siege, and uphold the life sentence.
As we saw in our report there, Mr. Mladic is revered by some of his compatriots. They see him as a hero. What do you make of that?
It is true that Srebrenica and Mladic's role in Srebrenica has remained contested memory in Serbia and in the region, despite all the number of verdicts detailing the atrocity and the responsibility of Mladic and Karadzic, for that matter. But the public in Serbia has never given the fair presentation of what was happening there. And in July 1995, I lived in Belgrade, and then public was occupied celebrating the first major sport victory. It was a European basketball championship, and then Yugoslavia won in Greece. And media reports did not detail on Bosnia, on war, on atrocities. Instead, it was just another victory, ending the war, and that is how it remained till today.
Well, as you say, you've lived in Serbia when Mr. Mladic committed the atrocities there in Srebrenica. In an earlier interview, you told us that most people there, including yourself, didn't realize what was happening. You just explained what was on television. Are people there today aware of what happened? Do they recognize the Srebrenica massacre as a war crime?
Generally, I think there is awareness that atrocity was committed, but the genocide charge is highly contested as a political charge. And mainly population would say that it doesn't amount to genocide. Instead, when talking about genocide in Serbia, you would probably hear about Jasenovac and the Second World War atrocities against Serbs, rather than applying genocide to atrocities to the war in 90s.
And just finally, the conflicts surrounding the breakup of the former Yugoslavia, they involved ethno-nationalist movements that linger on in the Balkans today. How dangerous would you say those movements are?
Nationalism and these movements have been dangerous, and they flourished during the war. They've been a steady part of regional politics in the last 3 decades. Nevertheless, there is a disturbing trend of rise of radical right, mainly connecting through social media, where anonymous users are celebrating genocide in Bosnia and turning Mladic and Karadzic into heroes, inviting for acceleration of violence. Terrorist Andreas Breivik in Norway and Brenton Tarrant in New Zealand were inspired by radical right and Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic. And this rise of radical right is by no means endemic to Balkan. It is really connecting Islamophobic extremists beyond Europe.
Dr. Ritsic, thank you so very much for talking with us. That was Dr. Katarina Ritsic of Leipzig University.